In March 2009, Inuit women from across Canada's Arctic met in Iqaluit, Nunavut to discuss how climate change is affecting their health and well-being of their families and communities. They discussed how changes to the seasons and ice conditions are causing more injuries and accidents. There is also increased stress and anxiety as people are no longer confident about their traditional knowledge and ability to predict the weather. There are concerns about the health and continued presence of wildlife such as caribou. There is worry about the future. Entire communities may have to be relocated because of thawing of the permafrost. Wildlife and country food are cornerstones of Inuit culture, values, and practices. Changes to the environment and the ability to harvest country foods are also having an impact on the traditional roles of men and women in Inuit society. Women take great pride in their ability to produce the warmest waterproof clothing to ensure the survival of hunters on the land, who in turn take great pride in their ability to provide for their families and communities. Changes are being observed in the health of caribou. There seems to be more disease and skins can be thinner, resulting in fewer high-quality skins for traditional clothing that is an essential survival tool for hunters. Inuit women also possess significant traditional scientific knowledge, including the nutritional value of country food. Topics discussed included the impacts of climate change on food security, traditional knowledge, and activities such as harvesting and clothing production, as well as recommendations for future actions. The overwhelming consensus was that more study and research was required, that elders and youth should study climate change together, and that education on food preparation to prevent botulism, etc., was imperative. Despite the worry of contaminants, PCBs, and POPs in country food, Inuit women encouraged pregnant Inuit women to continue to eat nutritious country food for the health of their unborn children.
There's definitely a change. Our seasons are changing in the sense of our fall's longer, our springs are shorter. It seems it gets nice and then it melts so quickly. Our tunic time, as an example, our spring festivities, I call it, coming out of our hibernation, varies now year to year. They actually look at how much snow do we have to be able to accommodate some of the activities that go on.
Being a CBC reporter, we get to hear all kinds of different stories about climate change. Living up here and being outdoors all the time and trying to go camping as much as possible, you can see some subtle changes. They're not major yet. Who knows if they're going to be major, but they're still a little bit subtle. We all notice now, like today, it's towards the end of March, but in some places in Nunavik, it's going to be plus weather temperatures, and it's raining. And there's been some freak weather in the past, so we can't really associate that with climate change, but there are some very mild days in the Qaluit. This winter, we barely had any storms. Now, I don't know if that's anything to do with climate change. I have no idea, but that could just be the way our winter has been. But there are some subtle changes that I noticed. We have earlier spring thaw, and there's a lot more hunters that sometimes come home empty-handed, so the Inuit women might not have as much material that they can work with. Inuit women always relied on our natural environment, which is in the winter always cold, in the spring it's thawing out, in the summertime short season for picking berries and things like that, and in the fall this is how you deal with when it's caribou hunting season time, this kind of caribou fur you're looking for. I remember growing up, my mom and dad always had a schedule. In the spring, this is what you do. In the summer, this is what you do. In the fall, this is what you do. In the wintertime, we're at our winter camp, and this is what we did. And these are the animals that we lived on seasonally, just like they do in the South, Now, it's like that could be a little bit skewed, but the other side of it is that we're living in communities now, so we don't observe as much as we used to. But when you're actually in the short spring and summer season and the fall season, when everybody's out camping, enjoying the land and things like that, sometimes I wonder if some of the women and the men, because they have to sort of look after the camp at the same time, observe these changes.
Every night I check out the sky, and then in the morning when the sun is starting to rise, so I can know what day is going to bring or the next day. It's very hard to say now. Like, I had to speak to, normally I'll go when I want to go, but this morning a friend of mine called me and said they're not leaving because there's a blizzard warning on the radio. And I wasn't listening to the radio, and most times I try and rely on the clouds and the sun and the stars the night before, but I can't do that. Starting from 98 on, the only thing that haven't changed is the north wind indicators. That always brings clear sky. And the other directions, you never know anymore. The whiteouts like today are normal for this time of year, but the conditions on the ice are not normal, so that makes it more difficult. And so many people are going through the ice because of that. And those are our main hunters for the community. The people who usually know how to travel with no problem.
Just from a very general perspective, I know that the skins of animals are getting thinner. The comments have been made by friends who are seamstresses with fur products. There's the uncertainty of having your husband, loved one, go out to the sea ice to hunt for seal, and in the winter months, and the uncertainty involved with that as to whether or not your hunter will come back, because the ice conditions are so unpredictable. I was just at a local food processing plant the other day to see what he had for sale. Usually has everything under the sun: narwhal, Arctic char, caribou, muskoxen. He has shrimps and scallops, and his fridges and freezers were bare. All of the freezers were propped open, and he says, "I have hardly anything in my freezers and fridge." Sorry, he says,
How come?
because there's nobody out there hunting and fishing.
I'm from inland community of Baker Lake. It's the only inland Inuit community in Canada. The elders have told us, like for the past 25 years or 30 years, the water levels has gone down a lot. In areas where they used to travel by boat, that completely dried up. The only time we can travel safely is during the early spring when the water levels are high. So other than that, anytime starting from late August to September, the water levels are very, very low. And that has affected many hunters that travel up and down the rivers. They can no longer, travel with heavy load. The elders have told us that they used to be able to tell what the weather forecast is going to be the next day just by looking at the clouds and the skies. But that's not always true anymore. So what the elders say and what the younger generation are hearing is completely different now. The traditional and cultural way of telling about the weather protecting, it's not always true anymore. Another thing is what the hunters and elders have told us is that during the winter, the weather has changed a lot. Nowadays, there's no suitable snow for building igloos to make a shelter. Even last year, I think, there was hardly any snow cover at all in Baker Lake. Nowadays, we do a lot of our hunting or camping or anything to do with outdoor activities. It's just playing it by ear, seeing the weather, how it's going to go today, not like before. So it looks like we have to start from the beginning and start all over again, change our lifestyle, our way of hunting.
I went to a community on a meeting with an elderly. On the third day, he says, I'm tired, I'm cold. That third day for lunch, we got invited, and it was country food. He came back feeling refreshed because he eats country food every day. Some of us are not fortunate to eat it every day, but some of us at least once a week try and eat it. But there's still some every day they rely on it, and it impacts their body.
Me and Elizabeth are from the generation where our parents just spoke Inuit, and her and I went to formal schooling. Formal schooling meaning, a southern way of being educated, classroom style and all that sort of stuff. We grew up with that. And but when we went home, it was like our parents only spoke Inuit. We had country food every single day. And as a matter of fact, when we were growing up, we used to have a competition between my sister and me, especially because we were always competing with one another, who could eat the most seal liver, who could eat the most raw seal. And we would just like stuff our faces with that. And you didn't need any supplementary vitamins from the store because you got everything that you needed from the animal that your father caught, that your mom prepared for you. And there is nothing like mom's cooking. Like everybody in Canada says, there's nothing like mom's cooking. And when my mom started cooking like Kraft dinner and rice and hot dogs, sorry, Mom, bless your soul. And she got her first wok, her stir-fry wok. I said, Mom, can you just stick to like making seal stew or, caribou stew or something like that? Because that's where I really enjoy your cooking. That's where you're good at. We're already being impacted in different ways with education, our environment, housing and all that sort of stuff. And traditional food and what you get from the land seems to be one of the few things, plus our language, that we're just barely hanging on to. So if our animals somehow, weirdly in the future, because of the way that the climate change is going, if everything changes here and all the animals disappear for some freak reason or another, we're screwed. We're definitely screwed. And that's very scary.
I'm not as confident The colors we use as indicators are still kind of different, so I'm never sure now if I'm going in the safe ice or not, especially where I put my seal nets. A dark color usually used to say it's dangerous, but not not a dark color on ice. Where there's a lot of snow, there's dark color, and usually there's no dark color in a lot of snow. So that confuses me on being able to judge if it's safe there or not. The main lake routes we use to get to our destinations and hunting area, we have to take more precaution now. I'm still scared. I'm still learning about ice, but since climate change, it's much harder to predict.
The other thing I've been talking about that really impacts women, the whole family actually, is search and rescue. In the past, there was a lot of searches. More and more now you hear today of rescues. When a hunter goes hunting, they could be gone for 3 days, as an example. Where they crossed a river 3 days ago, when they come back, it's water, it's running. So they're not really lost, but they have to be rescued. You hear more of that. When there's a rescue, it's usually the hunter out, so it really impacts a woman because they don't know. When they're called out, at that point, it's a search. But at the end, it ends up being a rescue. So that has a huge impact on women.
I would like to encourage women to teach their young boys why it's important to butcher properly when you're hunting, where to cache it, why you keep it out of the sun if you're bringing it home, why you butcher right away or why you don't, on the different times of years, different times of seasons. The younger generation is lacking that, and the education system up here, because it's so new, doesn't recognize that those can be incorporated into health subjects, biology, science, and those are very important, and that's what's lacking between the older generation and the newer generation. The other environmental impact that's very obvious around Iqaluit, our strongest environmental laws of keeping lakes and rivers clean. You have people who don't know how to tell the difference between a lake and a pond and a creek and a river because it's snow covered, and they're butchering in those areas where we never do that for the sake of the fish population and also for the health of the fish, but also our main drinking water. So those are not, I don't think, adhered to from what we've seen out on the land.
I'm from the Kamanakyo area. I grew up where I saw thousands and thousands of caribou certain time of the year when I was growing up. I was back to my old homeland 10 years ago, and that summer we had extreme weather temperatures, and the caribous were dying off from the weather. And everywhere we went, we found caribou carcasses that died either from the heat and from the bugs. This is how it is affecting, the climate change is affecting our caribou herds. Even in Baker Lake, we know exactly when all those thousands of caribou gonna show up in July. So we go to our traditional hunting areas to wait for them. Sometimes they don't show up. We don't know if it's what we call cumulative effects, like we have so many mining industry happening in our areas. That is also affecting their migration patterns.
Climate change is something that affects everybody, so we're all in it together all over the world. And maybe that is an opportunity to speak up for, like, instance, the toxins that gather in the animals, like along with the ice melting, to create awareness of one action in this end of the world comes out in the other end of the world. There's nothing you can just do it and then it disappear and we just push it away and it's gone. There's no gone. We are all in it together.
We're such a small population in Canada, but we represent 1/5 of Canada's landmass, and yet we don't have very much power to exert when it comes to changing major behavior of those who are contributing to the rapid increase of carbon emissions into our atmosphere. And yes, it would be wonderful if we could get the message out there.
Pollution has been around for as long as the Industrial Revolution started. To the extent of it is, maybe it got worse in the last 100 years, who knows? And climate change is coming from accumulation of all the pollutants in the air, who knows? But the only advice I would give is not to the mothers, but to people that make policy, to ensure that that the health of the mom, the expectant mom, and the environment and everything else, as much as possible, try to have as much clean environment as you can. I just think that Inuit women are like through radio, through having a mayor, through different politicians, and through community workers and things like that, Inuit women are having bigger voice. So I think the only advice I would give Inuit women is keep talking, keep voicing your concerns, because you're the nurturer, you're the community, you keep the community together, you keep the hunters well clothed and warm and everything. Demand what you think should change, demand what you think that will make the community and your everything else better for you as a woman, so that you can continue enjoying what you're doing. If you're a traditional stay-at-home mom who spends a lot of time sewing and preparing skins, have a voice in that area. If you're a professional woman who is concerned about the elders, talk about that. Like, just come out and don't worry about what the backlash might be, because the more we talk about these things, then the more people will be listening.